as far as raising the age to 19, I believe it is. Now, I'm looking at, there's supposed to be a deterrent. I'm retired from the police department, and I remember, here's one of the problems that I see is we constantly had like 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds back in the 80s that would be on the street, right, selling the drugs. They'd work for somebody. And they'd get a slap on the wrist because it wouldn't really criminal activity, it'd be youth. Then once they hit 16, okay, and they kept selling, then they'd go in as an adult. And believe it or not, what we would find is though they kept repeating that behavior in the same precinct where they were getting arrested all the time, once they hit 16 and they went through the adult part of the criminal justice system, we didn't see them anymore because now there were consequences. And I do have some concerns. I mean, we've had recently the knockout game that they're playing. Some people may think that's kids being stupid, but at the same time, there's real consequences to those actions. We have everywhere a heroin epidemic, and it's all over the place. And we have kids dying, we have families being destroyed, you know, and I'm looking at this as part of it too, where if I raise the age, now that child that gets the slap on the wrist can keep doing it till he's 19 years old. I have some concerns about that. We do have some models though. So, I mean, you have the drug court and you have veterans court right now. And I think that the criminal justice system or the judges can actually, I'm trying to see what the need for this is. Because if you have that, they can come into court and, like in the drug court, they'll sign a contract. They'll plead guilty, right, to whatever the charge is. They'll be in a highly supervised, you know, program for a year or whatever it may be on an interim probation type thing. Then it can get reduced to a violation, which is not a crime. I mean, I'm just looking, wouldn't that be a better way to control behavior, or not control behavior, but to keep an eye on the individual? I mean, if they go from a misdemeanor right down to a violation, or they're not being charged as an adult, I'm trying to figure out what kind of impact is that going to have on crime in our state. The other thing is getting back to the heroin and oxycodone and the whole, and what I've seen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the oxycodone, they're buying those, and after a while they're seeing that it's $50, $60 a pill, and basically how they're getting hooked is they're saying, okay, look, you can get the same high with heroin by snorting it, and then what happens is they can't get the same high, they get them to shoot it, and then they're done. All right? And a lot of that is being brought in by they're actually organizations. So there's one guy sending out people to sell, and they're going to be recruiting children into that. Can you address what are we doing with trying to work with the federal government or form a task force, okay? Start really taking a hard look at the heroin problem. That's, you know, I'm hearing about it in Saranac Lake, I'm hearing about it on Long Island, all parts of the state. This isn't, you know, just one area. And going after RICO prosecutions to really break this. And, you know, I'm just wondering, what are you doing there? Are we looking at forming a task force? Would the money be better spent forming a task force where we can bring in state police, city police, and everyone else to form a task force and bring in the feds and start doing RICO prosecutions where there's real punishment for those actions and there's a real deterrent for it, because right now it's out of control. And what are you doing to deal or address the heroin problem that's going on throughout the entire state?
Two questions. As to your first question, I share your concerns. I spent 25 years as a prosecutor before I came to DCJS and handled every type of case, spent 22 years trying murders, you know, and handled more than my share of cases involving 16 and 17-year-olds who either killed someone or got killed. So it is a very real and a very legitimate concern. I also look at the statistics, though, that say currently 41% of the robberies in 2012 were committed by 16 to 20-year-olds. 28% of the violent felonies in our state were committed by 16 to 20-year-olds in 2012. And when I look at the system, I say that I think there has to be a way that we can do better. I think there has to be a way we can do better for our youth, and I think there has to be a way we can do better for our communities in terms of making our communities safe. And in response to previous question from the Assemblyman, I think that is the reason for a commission, because this is a complicated issue. I don't believe it's a simple issue. I don't believe it's a question of changing labels. I think it's a question of taking a real and hard look at what it is we're doing and what we can do better to get better outcomes for our youth and get better outcomes for our community. So I think your concerns are valid, and I share them. As to your second point, I absolutely agree. We're hearing from our partners across the state that heroin is increasingly becoming a significant and very real issue. At DCJS, one of the things we do is training, and we're looking at what we can do in terms of law enforcement training to help support our partners. We are not a frontline agency at DCJS. You know, as you mentioned a task force, and you mentioned police and state police.
If you can hold on for 1 second,
Just if you can just let me finish.
No, because I have 36 seconds, and you have plenty of time to answer, and I get stuck with the clock, right? The bottom line is the RICO prosecution, because you have to break the back of the people that are bringing it in here. So that is so important. I mean, and the best way, it's been shown when they're trying to break the organized crime in the city. The RICO prosecutions are what broke the back of organized crime. Okay, this is no different. We need to turn around and partner up with the feds in order to have real, deterrent. And the best way to have that deterrent is through a RICO prosecution. So I want to know about a task force and forming a task force to get this done with all law enforcement throughout the state, because this is not, we're not looking at a heroin epidemic coming. It's here. We have it. And it's a giant problem. It's one of the biggest problems of the state, and that's leading to more crime in the state. And if we don't deal with it, we have a problem.
Yeah, and as you know, and I know from our experience on the ground, those RICO decisions are made between federal and state prosecutors as they look at their cases. Certainly, from our perspective as a support agency, we support the cooperation between the federal and state agencies. Part of IMPACT was to grow that cooperation, and part of GIVE is to continue that. So I certainly agree that that's an important part of the solution.